the Zoom recording, and I'm going to share my screen with everyone. Let's try to do that. Okay, does everyone see the booklet?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, do not covet. So we're actually going to start from 10 and work ourselves down to number 4. And then instead of doing 3, 2, 1, we're actually going to do 1, 2, 3. The reason for this is it's just much easier to relate to the interpersonal ones before we get to the ones with God. And I think once we discover how we can relate to them and how to relate to them, the ones, the first 3 relating to God will be much more interesting. So, and accessible, and hopefully that works for your groups as well. So number 10 is do not covet. And as an introduction, we start off over here and do the reading. We live in a world where many people believe that success comes from money or fame. Others believe that success is measured by things less tangible, such as family, love, education, and talents. Envy or coveting can cause those who have not achieved success to be constantly unhappy. Ironically, those who have achieved success are often left bewildered that happiness and equanimity do not necessarily follow from their achievements. So it seems everybody is kvetching. If you don't know what kvetching is, it's Yiddish for complaining. How can our tradition shed light on this paradox? So let's look at a few texts. What is success? Source number 1. It's actually the Webster's dictionary definition of success. The attainment of wealth, favor, or eminence. Yeah, believe it or not. That is in the, is actually in the dictionary. Source number 2, which is a bit closer to home, Pirkei Avot. For one, Ben Zomas would say, who is rich? Ezehu Ashir, who is rich, who is wealthy. Asomeach b'chalko, one who is happy with his lot. A classic, number 3, a little less known, but very interesting. This is Ecclesiastes 9:11. And I'll read the English. I further observed under the sun that the race is not won by the swift, nor the battle by the valiant, nor is bread won by the wise, nor wealth by the intelligent, nor favor by the learned. For the time of mischance comes to all.
He's so positive.
As always. Okay, conversation. What is your definition of success? What is your definition of wealth?
I guess my definitions have changed because since I started studying Musar, I'd have to say that Ben Zoma is correct.
Okay, great. How would you think it's generally understood out there?
Possessions.
Is it having
stuff?
Having stuff. The bigger the house, the more cars and the more stuff you have. That's a pretty basic definition, but they're quite common. Whether people would actually admit to that or subconsciously or believing that is a question. Anyone else?
Well, I think we added this whole other piece in the beginning of the less tangible, having love, education, family, great career, great kids, great great talents. So I think those are things that are less more acceptable to be coveting.
Mm-hmm. Right. we'll say more meaningful, more meaningful things. And yet, as you point out, one could really covet those. Right? One could look at the neighbors next door and say, what a wonderful family they have, and I wish I had a family just like theirs. What about wealth?
Yeah.
That Ben Zoma says explicitly he's dealing with wealth, and yet we know that wealth is a lot of dollars. By the way, how many dollars today would you call a wealthy person? Is a millionaire still a millionaire? Like, that's it?
Wealth is more than you have.
I think it's all relative.
Right.
You know,
it's definitely relative.
Like, if you're just a millionaire, I know people who, living in New York, and maybe they make a lot of money, but it's very expensive to live here. But to other people, it would be, great. Or I don't consider myself wealthy, but to somebody who's homeless, yeah, I'm wealthy. So I think everything is relative, and I think that's why I love this verse from Pirkei Avot, because I don't think that everyone says you don't need to have financial stuff if you're happy with what you have. There are people who are very happy with not being a billionaire, and of course, as we see from the examples, there are many wealthy people who are not happy. So it really all depends.
I agree with Carol that our definition changes, and you mentioned yours changed as a result of your engagement with Musar, and I find that that mine has changed with age. And I'm sure that is common and not at all unique. That there are certain things I just don't have time or interest in pursuing anymore. They're just not. I've released them, not in a reconciled way, or in a way that's like resigned, but in a way that I remember my mother gave me few words of wisdom, actually, in this sense, but she always said, you want different things in life at different times. You just don't always want the same thing. And so I think it's a fluid situation.
Yeah. I always like the last quote a lot, because I think it's so important to remember that, like, nobody gets by this world unscathed, no matter what you've achieved and what you have. And so it's kind of humbling and important to recognize that, I always say even a good life is a hard life.
I guess for me, that Ecclesiastes resonates because I was a successful physician and have a good family, but I became ill about 26 years ago, and I had to give that all up. Now, that changed the way I look at things. For 10 or 15 years, I was very unhappy with my lot. And that's why, for me, the Ben Zoma reframed how I was viewing my current life.
So maybe you can answer then, what does it mean to be happy with your lot?
Well, instead of dealing with being unhappy with what I don't have or I no longer have, for me, I'm grateful for what I do have. And having read through the booklet, that seems the way the booklet has trended, to go to a sense of gratitude. And if you're grateful for what you have, maybe you don't need or want what your neighbor had.
Nice. Okay. Let's go on to page 3. So as we said in the introduction, each Diber we're going to explore first on the literal level and then on an underlying level. And together we'll come out with a whole picture. So this actually is the introduction to what we call the Peshat, the literal understanding. And the Rambam codifies it in a very specific way. based on the, I'm going to read, based on the Rambam Sefer Mitzvot, prohibition 265, 266, see below, this debate consists of two parts. Lo titaveh, do not desire, and lo tachmod, do not covet. Lo titaveh, do not desire, prohibits the feeling of desire which occupies our thoughts on how to acquire someone else's spouse or property which they are unwilling to part. Lo tachmod, do not covet, in its specific meaning, forbids acting on those thoughts or trying to acquire the object of desire through coaxing or even buying it at a higher price than it's worth. So to be clear, the letter of the law, the actual isur or halachic prohibition of the debate, is both to dwell on the desire, that's one element of it, and or do something actual in order to gain something specific that belongs to someone else which they don't want to relinquish. So lo tachmod means I love your shoes and I want your shoes, right? Amazon obviously has relinquished us from this prohibition to a great extent, because if I want your shoes, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to order them for myself. That wouldn't be, according to the letter of the law, an issue. We'll see when we get to the underlying meaning. It's actually it's a good test case. Is that okay to look at someone else's shoes and say, wow, those are wonderful shoes, I want a pair too? I think there's a very interesting answer that comes out from the underlying meaning of it. But the specific one is when someone owns something, they have ownership, they do not want to relinquish it, and you are now trying to get it from them. So the texts say like this. This is actually from Parshat V'etchanan in Deuteronomy 5:18. We've said wherever it's the Diber, this is one of the versions. And you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor shall you desire your neighbor's house, his field, his manservant, maidservant, ox, donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. The Rambam source 2, he says, Mitzvah 266, we are warned not to think up a scheme how to acquire someone else's object, which they do not want to relinquish. And Mitzvah 265, we are warned not to act upon our schemes to acquire an object of desire that the owner does not want to relinquish, even through coaxing them to sell it at a higher price, which is fascinating. Okay, so
I have a question.
Yes.
Is it seems that one of the aspects of the definition is that this is something that belongs to somebody else. What about, I want to be I covet money, or I covet something more abstract, or I covet something, and none of my friends have it. I haven't targeted it. I've seen it in the showroom. Is the vendor considered, the vendor wants to sell it to you. Is that coveting? People who collect things.
Right. There's a certain stamp out there which you want to get your hands on.
Yeah, and it's not dependent on that someone doesn't want to sell it. What if the person actually does want to sell it and you just keep coveting more and more and more?
Right. So, okay. So, again, on the literal level, and it really comes out according to the Rambam on the halachic level, and then on the underlying level, I think that the answers are a little bit different. On the literal level, it's only if it belongs to someone else and they do not want to relinquish it. How do you know if someone doesn't want to relinquish something?
You've already asked and they've said no.
You ask them, right? So you knock on your neighbor's house, the door, and you say, well, your house is nicer than mine. Do you want to sell it? If they say yes, you buy it. Good for you. Yeah, that's commerce. That's regular commerce. In fact, this point that the Rambam says about coaxing them through selling it at a higher price is quite controversial, actually, because it really depends on, I think, it really depends on the market and the way that it works. Let's take commercial property. Why do people own commercial property?
To make money.
To make money. So if someone came to me and say, hey, you've got a building, the market value is $10 million. I'll offer you $20 million. I don't think they are having me relinquish something I don't want to relinquish by coaxing me into, by giving me more money. They are just saying, listen, you want money. We know you want the money. We'll give you the money you want. However, let's say I'm living happily in a house where, you know, people settle down and live for years, and I'm settled in the neighborhood. And I have no real interest in selling my house. And someone comes along and says, you know, the market value for your house is $400,000. I'll give you 600. That might be, right? That might, I'm even not sure in that case. That might be, and I think that the people that explain this Rambam, that's what they say. I don't really want to sell it. I have no interest in relinquishing it. I'm not in it for the money, per se. I'm in it to live in a house. Yes, it has value. Everything has value. So that might be a case where offering more money is a transgression of coveting. Coveting, Joel, your question, coveting something out there that doesn't belong to anyone, per se. That also, according to the letter, you know, we're going to deal with the question of ambition. I think it's quite a related question. Sorry?
And greed.
Yes, ambition and greed. You know, and what's the that's a good question. What's the difference between them? So allow us to go into the next section and explore what the underlying value is, and then we can come back to this question as well. So the questions here, by the way, are: what does anything belonging to your neighbor refer to? You know, it's quite a list over here. You should not covet your neighbor's wife, house, field, manservant, maidservant, ox, donkey. What is anything that belongs to your neighbor? One of the school kids in Cape Town that's learning this was asked this question, and I think an 11th grader, and said, you should never want to be your neighbor. You know, it's not just what they have, it's also who they are, which I thought was a beautiful answer. Do you agree that thoughts generally lead to actions? So the way that the Rambam understands it is that this wanting and then scheming will lead to action.
Reminds me of when President Carter said, I lust in my heart. And that was a transgression.
And he was, I'm not familiar with the context.
Sorry. Oh, I don't know. I don't remember the context, but he's a Christian, and he talked about lusting in his heart. Right. And I think for Jewish people, that didn't resonate. Like I think we're more focused on what you do with that lusting. Like, So this sort of surprised me, because I always thought that in the Jewish tradition, it was more like what you do, not sort of, you can feel certain things. And maybe Musar tries to mitigate the internal work and help you work more internally. But at the end of the day, it's what you actually do than what you actually, you know, what your emotions tell you. It's more about the chayav than about the, I always thought that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, I think the Rambam's clearly saying there's an aspect here of how you're thinking.
Right.
And that's what it's focusing on.
I believe, at least like when you look at the technical definition, you know, halakhic definition of coveting, you have to actually act on something. We're not immune to having, you know, proper thoughts, but it's not really, you're not really committing an avera unless you actually act on it. But yes, on the other hand, if you have the thoughts, that can't be good, because they could eventually lead you to it. So it's better not to have the thoughts either. But like, you know, when Jimmy Carter said that, You know, when I looked at it right away, we're like, no, that's not a sin in Judaism. Having the thought isn't the sin. You know, acting on the thought is the sin. But yes, we want to make sure that, you know, and I think that's where you said, you're right, Musar does, you know, hopefully get us to the thought process that we're going to act in the proper way. It's important, but, you know, I mean, even so, look at the Rambam when he says about, you know, tzedakah, you know, even the lowest form of like, I'm going to throw the money at you because I'm aggravated, but here's the money. It's still a mitzvah. Hopefully we're going to get to, you know, level, you know, 8, but I don't even know. I never really even thought about it. There's different levels of doing something with the proper thought, but is one mitzvah better than another mitzvah? You know, we get extra brownie points. I don't know. It's just either good or bad. So
I would like to argue with you on that, by the way. I think there is this, you know, bottom line letter of the law question, but then there's the whole world of Rahmana Libaba, which, you know, the Zohar says, God wants your heart. Where are our thoughts? Where is our attention? Where are our sensitivities? And actually, the main thing I've learned from the Ten Commandments are, where are our values? What do we value? And that to me has been a huge revelation, that's really important. And I think, yeah, where we are maybe unique is in this fixation of deed, but that should never take away from the importance and the attention that we give to our thoughts. And I think the example over here, by the way, is where specifically there is a transgression of thought. You know, we are warned not to think up a scheme of how to acquire someone else's object. So I would say, you know, someone told me they had a rabbi, and the certain guy was dealing with finding people very attractive. And it was like, how do I deal with this? So he said, well, you know, is it the first look or the second look? You know, the first look, what can we do about it? You know, you looked, you saw, you desired, very nice, you know, but now what do? So, yeah, you look across the road, it's a beautiful house. You like it. You wish you had one like that. Gesundheit hate. Yes, you could, hopefully by the end of this booklet, you'll be able to control that thought. It might not even occur to you. But then the Rambam says, but hang on a second. If you start to dwell on that, to start to think up a scheme of how to acquire someone else's, that's a real problem. That really is an aveira, but in machshava, in thought. So, okay, let's go here. If the Rambam text above is explaining the pashat, the literal meaning of the Diber, what is the yesod, the underlying value? We ask, you know, what principle underlies this not looking over your shoulder to see what everyone else has? And the apparent obvious answer is what do you guys say? What comes to mind?
Be happy with what you have. Focus more on that.
Be happy with what you have? Excellent.
Seeing the opportunities within yourself or within your situation.
Right.
I always say that I'm an expert lemonade maker because there have been lemons in my life. I've chosen to focus on the positive rather than the negative.
Oh, I love that. Can I use that?
Yes.
Okay.
The original quote, which is not mine, says, when life hands you lemons, make lemonade.
Right, but I've heard that, but I haven't ever heard that I'm an expert lemonade maker. We should strive. We should all strive to be that. Okay. I think what we are going to explore here really is all the same subject and different nuances of it, different aspects of it. And it does, of course, speak to focusing on what you have and being happy with that. Sameach b'chalko, being really happy with that. I think maybe one of the biggest questions is when you at the end of the day, we would start with gratitude, which by the way is we're going to discuss that next. Gratitude and the karata tov, and even to inanimate objects, and then emunah bitachon, faith and trust. At the end of the day, you can say, well, I was discussing this with a really multimillionaire, and I was very surprised by what he said. He said, even your average person today, who's not considered wealthy at all, has much more than royalty had 200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
They did not have electricity, flowing water, insulation, indoor heating, food from all over the world available, 100 feet away. And I was like, wow, what an insight. I wouldn't imagine a multimillionaire to have that insight. But
he read Yuval Harari.
Sorry?
He read Yuval Harari.
Oh, maybe.
He said that's his whole thing, that things are much better today, even.
Right. With our current.
But I have a question. I think one of the issues that this raises is the issue of ambition. So where does ambition fit in this conversation of being happy with your lot and feeling a sense of gratitude and contentment? Like, they seem to have a certain cognitive dissonance or holding two values at the same time. That can you have gratitude and being happy with your lot and also having a sense of ambition that you want more, you want better, you want something else, and you need to work towards that.
Okay, Audrey, your question is on page 7. What is the balance between contentment and ambition? I'd like to wait to get there.
Okay.
I think let's look at this, and I think it's answering the question, which really kind of irks us when we consider how much we have. The question is, yes, but why does he have more? Right? Yes, I have so much. I have more than royalty 150 years ago. There are so many blessings in my life. But at the end of the day, why does my neighbor have more in some aspects than I do? That's an obvious question. So let's look at this. This underlying this debate is a call to recognize our unique parts. This requires a paradigm shift of looking inside ourselves and not focusing on our hardship and not focusing on our hardships and challenges, but seeing opportunities within these challenges and beyond to be impactful and elevate ourselves. And there's a really beautiful quote. I once saw this on someone's fridge. That's how good a quote it is. This organization had put it on a magnet, was on someone's fridge. Allah is sure, it's by Rav Shlomo Wolbe. Every person should say, I, with my strengths and talents, facial features and personality traits, am unique in the world. Among all those living today and in all past generations, there was no one like me, nor will there ever be anyone like me until the end of time. God has sent me into the world with a unique mission that no one else can fulfill, only I in my one-time existence. And that's, similar, but a Hasidic way of saying this is when Rav Zusha was on his deathbed, his students found him in uncontrollable tears. They tried to comfort him by telling him that he was almost as wise as Moses and as kind as Abraham, so he was sure to be judged positively in heaven. Zusha replied, when I get to heaven, I will not be asked, why weren't you like Moses, or why weren't you like Abraham? They will ask, why weren't you like Zusha? And then what will I say? So, conversation. Do you believe that each of us have a unique mission? If yes, how do you know what your unique mission is?
So I'd like to bring up something that challenges this a little bit.
Sure.
I was listening to the head of Aetna speak the other day. He's the CEO of Aetna, And he said, this millennial generation is the sickest generation he's ever seen, that we've ever seen. They're the least equipped to deal with anxiety. They have more anxiety, more stress. And yet I feel like as parents, we gave them this message. You're unique, you're wonderful, you can do anything, you have all of these opportunities, the world is your oyster. But actually life can be quite mundane, and work can be quite mundane. And I wonder, what is this really saying? Is it really saying that each of us is so special? I don't know if that's the message. I feel like that this can be turned into something that really is a problem when you think that you're so unique, and then you have to do all this. You have to start at the bottom. I remember going to a BBYO convention, and I said, if I saw, there were 6,000 teens, if I saw one more empowered teen that was going to be CEO, I was going to, everybody was just so, these teens had expectations of being so empowered. And I wonder whether or not this is a message that has to be tempered, or it doesn't say exactly what it says. I wonder about this.
I'm hearing what you're saying, but I don't know if I would interpret it that way. I think we all are unique, and it's important to know that we're all different, we all special. But the second half of the question is, what's your mission? So I think these kids who are just told that they're unique are not being asked to think about what their mission is. Mm-hmm. That's the difference. Mm-hmm. That's the hard part. I don't even, you have to really think about that. What is your purpose? What is your meaning? Then you can begin. But I think everyone has to acknowledge that. I don't think it's a negative necessarily to say we are all unique. I think we are all unique. That's the beauty of what God created. Everyone is different. But again, we have to have the power to look deep into ourselves and say, what's our individual mission, and to look beyond that. And maybe, the kids today are not being, they're not being given that,
I guess maybe there's a third element, that you're unique, what's your mission, and then how do you achieve that, and what does that mean to achieve your mission?
Because you're unique doesn't mean like you're perfect and we should coddle you. It's like that's what happens. Like everything gets, yes, you're great, and everyone gets an A and everyone gets a star. There's got to be a balance. But I think it's not a bad thing to tell somebody that they're special and unique, because the world can get everybody down too. On the other hand, there's the internet with, everyone saying this one is, bad, and I got to be this way and that way. And it's, I think you have to look a little deeper than that.
I'd like to add something that I think is related, and I can stop if it's not. One of the things that I've observed is that most of us spend the vast majority of our lives doing things that don't enrich or reward or make us happy. And if you ask someone minute by minute, when do you feel happiest? You're generally not going to get when I'm shopping, when I'm getting something new. And then how much time do we spend doing that? And maybe part of this is allowing people, if we're saying contentment, we're talking about contentment, have people defined for themselves their unique contentment. I love looking for seashells. It's one of the things I love to do. Okay, that doesn't, so there, I think people have the unique, this is when I feel most alive, this is when I feel I am contributing the most, etc. And maybe helping people, maybe there's an issue of helping people understand, when are you truly happiest?
What are you doing living in Kansas City?
Meaning? I love Kansas City. This is a great, great city, guys.
There's no seashells there, right?
Oh, I know. Yeah, right. I get it. I travel,
Yeah, I think, just to add to what you're saying, so pertinently, I think, when you think about Ben Zoma, and normally when I teach this, I ask people, what is wealth? And eventually I get them to admit, yes, money, good. Okay, now that we know that it's money, what does money do for you?
Yeah.
What does a lot of money actually do for you? And there are inevitably two answers. Some people say it gives a sense of security. I'm secure, I don't have to worry. I can pay the bills. If something happens, we can hire the best doctors. We don't have to worry. And then some people say it gives opportunity. It gives me, I can go on the vacations I always wanted. I could buy the things, I can do things. I feel I can live. So there seem to be like two inhibitors to life. One is worry, and the other is confined by situation. And I think we're what Audrey brought up about, teaching kids that you're unique. I think the conclusion is wrong. And Sharon, I guess I'm repeating what you said. The conclusion is not, and therefore you can be the next CEO of Google. No, the conclusion is, and therefore you have a very specific mission, and you might not actually be wealthy ever. You might live a very simple financial life, but within your life, you have tremendous opportunity. And it's within that you need to find your mission. You need to be, and speaking about happiness, I think it's got a lot to do with what are you trying to achieve? What do you believe has real value? And when you start to resonate with those and not just maybe go with the flow, but start to really think, well, that, going for me to go and pick up my mother-in-law who has a hard time walking, and take 5 minutes to help her get in the car and be nice to her on the way home. Well, yeah, maybe that's part of my mission. Maybe that's just, that came my way and I have that way. That's the conclusion I believe we're missing. Obviously, the big question of, where to live, who to marry, what to do, what career needs real thought. And, maybe there's way west to go with that in terms of really recognizing who people are, what they're unique at, and where that could then lead to in terms of them making a meaningful difference in the world.
And how much is impacted in that choice by how much money I'm going to make as opposed to where my passions lie and what is meaningful to me, what I get back. Mm-hmm. It's not always just, dollars. It's there's more to it than that.
Yeah. Yeah. Dollars is just the opportunity. So
well, it's money. It's a transfer of energy. When you have a financial transfer, you're transferring energy. It's not just a piece of paper, in a sense. But as you said, it's the worry, anxiety, like you said, about not having enough. When you really look back and you said, well, I've always had enough. Maybe not a millionaire by any means, but enough to just have a roof over my head, food to eat, clothes to wear.
Yeah. And what did Anne Frank say? How wonderful it is that nobody need wait a single moment before starting to improve the world. Yeah. Hello. It's there. You don't need, to wait for all that cash to come in before you start living. Okay, excellent. I guess, I understand a lot of it. Alas, teachers, mentors, rabbis. What advice do we have actually for finding your unique mission?
Well, what are your skills? What did God give you as your abilities, and where what equates to meaning for you? And it's not the same for everybody.
Yeah, great. I think those would be two excellent questions to really think about and could really guide people. Okay, excellent. Gratitude. A deeper dive into Aseret. Aseret is often translated as gratitude. It literally means recognizing the good. The word hakarat is from the verb lahakir, to notice, and carries the message that the first step in being grateful is to recognize and appreciate all the good in our lives. It's mindfulness. It's paying attention. It's text. Talmud Menachet 43b. It is taught in a Braita that Rabbi Meir would say, a person is obligated to recite 100 blessings each day, every day, as it is stated in the verse. And now Israel, what, with the Hebrew word ma, does the Lord your God require of you? Rabbi Meir interprets the verse as though it said mea, not ma, 100 rather than ma, what. So, conversation. Why would this be what God asks of us? You know, what does God want from you? To say 100 blessings a day. How does that resonate with us? What does that mean?
Well, I think it's an unofficial gratitude list of the things that you are grateful for. Therefore, you are blessing them, not rotely, like I have to do 100 different things, but recognizing and being mindful of what you have, what you've seen, and saying thank you.
Right. And I think carrying on from what Ken just mentioned, you know, it would help us to recognize the gifts that we have. Right? To see, well, look what God's given me. You know, eventually when someone gives you enough, you have to stop and ask yourself one day, why are they giving this to me? It might take us many, many years. But I think that would really help us to understand who we are and why we're here. Okay, how is a grateful person different from an entitled person?
I think that one way is that a grateful person is continually aware of blessings rather than unaware of the blessings in his or her life. There's a presence and an awareness.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas an entitled expects to have good stuff, and it's part of what I am. So why say thank you? I'm allowed to have this.
I think it goes back to the Hakarat Hatov. It's noticing what's going on around you rather than it's all about me. You know, I'm the center of the world.
And I think also appreciating the fragility of that. Whereas, as Carol said, it's me. This is part of my life. I take it for granted. I will always have this. It will be forever because this is me. A grateful person might recognize this is what's happening to me right now, and I have no right to expect that it's going to be the same tomorrow.
And also, we just finished, you know, dwelling in our Sukkot, you know, with the leaky roof, and you're thinking, wow, it's just, you know, I'm grateful to have a roof over my head that doesn't leak. You know, it could be like this. It's fragile.
Fantastic. Okay. Gratitude even to inanimate objects. We should even display a karatah for inanimate objects, such as the water that protected Moses as a baby and helped liberate us from the Egyptians. The source, Exodus 8:1, and the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, hold out your arm with the rod over the rivers and canals and the ponds, and bring up the frogs on the land of Egypt. And the Midrash says, Rabbi Tanchum said, Hashem said to Moses, the water that guarded you when you were thrown into the river should not be struck by you. So, question, how do you further develop a karat tov? And what kind of gratitude can you have for inanimate objects?
I think it's related to environmentalism, at least in our family. That when my husband waters our garden, he thanks the plants and the trees.
Great, yeah. I think there's a direct link. And what, you know, if someone would be there watching him, would they, you know, what would they think?
Cuckoo. It's like, the beautiful Indian, the Native American tradition of you thank a tree before you cut it down, or you thank a tree before you pick its fruit. It's, it's not necessarily ours. We should be mindful of what we're doing.
Right. I think it's the same message as before. And appreciating what's around you, what's being given to you, what's been given to our world. That's an interesting source, by the way, for an environmentalist conscious thinking, is how Moses wouldn't, he would think about how Moses treated water for the rest of his life. Like, wow, look at this resource that we have. Look what it can do. Look how it saved me, but look at everything else it does. And of course we should protect it. Okay, great.
And maybe I shouldn't strike rocks anymore either.
Right. What robs us of our gratitude? Do you think there is a connection between a Karat Tov and the ages and stages of life? I think Julia mentioned that earlier. What's going on? We don't live in a very, it doesn't look to me that people are that grateful. I might be wrong. Maybe it's the people I shop with. What is robbing us of a sense of gratitude? And if Audrey's right, what's robbing our millennials of a sense of gratitude?
I think it's going back to the question before of the entitlement. There are so many people that think they're entitled to everything, or maybe we also see thinking about coveting, we see what everybody else has. Like the grass is always greener. And then we might, want to be like everybody else, happy, this, that. I mean, how many times you go on Facebook or whatever and you see all these people with posting all these, I'm going here, I'm going on a trip there, I'm going there, and this is wonderful. And I look at my little thing, I'm like, I don't have any of that. And you kind of feel bad, but your life may not be bad, but it's like, I'm not doing that. And then you find out that all that is just, it's not necessarily true that everybody's having a wonderful time and is better than you are. They're just posting these great little pictures. So,
well, the question is, why do you need to post those great little pictures?
Right. Well, sometimes obviously sometimes it's nice to see what everybody's doing, but yeah, sometimes it's like, why are we doing that? And I think, we feel like I'm a good person, I should have XYZ, like Joe over there. I don't have that. Why don't I? Whereas if you didn't know what Joe had, you might be fine. But and some of the youngsters may feel entitled.
Have we given them too much?
Maybe,
Well, I think that's the greatest generation gave they gave so much stuff to their children. They produced not such a great generation, because they didn't feel they need to work really for as hard as for what they got, or they expected more.
I don't know. Maybe it's we want to be able to provide for our children and not have them suffer like we do. So, but I don't know. I mean, could it be the technology? Whatever's going on. I don't know. But I think that I don't know. I think it's overrated that that some of these kids are, that we feel that they feel like they're so entitled. There are a lot of good kids out there too.
Yeah.
But I think it's just also, I think my father gave him a special when he grew up, in Brooklyn, and they were poor, but everybody was poor. They didn't know from anything. They were happy. They didn't until now, but now everything's out there. All you have to do is, everyone has a TV or a phone or videos or whatever, and you see what's going out there. So then people automatically might feel, not as good.
Interesting. Do you really think maybe the media and our exposure to the possibilities of life have created expectations, whether legitimate or not, and unfulfilled. That maybe that's part of not being grateful. Very interesting idea.
Maybe ignorance really is bliss. That not
Yeah.
seeing all these pictures and
Yeah.
these images on your cable or whatever, Netflix, you really appreciate more. You just know your journey. You know your life. You know your relationships, and as was said, you're happy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think there is no such thing anymore as what we always used to hear. We were poor, but we didn't even know it. If you live in America, you know it. And also, I'm very sympathetic to parents nowadays who truly do want to limit the activities and the acquisitions of their children, but their children go to school with other children, and when they're 2.5, these other kids are in soccer and blah, 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 blah. And it's really hard to buck that.
So
and that's what needs to happen.
How do you do that?
I told my 15-year-old, I love you, honey. We're not getting a Tesla. It's 5 of my friends have Teslas. I'm like, oh, that's great.
Wow. Yeah.
So how do you? But on the other hand, I had to buy our 12-yearolds, soccer boots, and they were expensive. He didn't want the $30 soccer boots. He wanted the $60. And why? Because there's a guy in his class with $120 soccer boots. Like I was doing half. He's not going less than that. But how do you do that, and then at the same time nurture a sense of gratitude? How do we help them? How do we help ourselves? We go shopping for, we might not buy the $30 shoes we could. We buy the $60 shoes. What do we do for ourselves to make sure we are grateful?
Sometimes it's seeing what other people don't have and giving back and helping them. I have a congregant that used to work in hospice all the time, and he said that helped him feel a sense of gratitude because he was walking out of there. The people in the hospice were not walking out of there, and he was able to comfort them, and then he was very grateful. So sometimes giving back and helping others that are not as fortunate as ourselves can help us feel gratitude. And maybe it's not a terrible idea to say thank you and do the blessings. That was the purpose of that, to actually say it. Sometimes we are saying it and we're not thinking, we're just saying it, without thinking about it, but it helps to force, to foster gratitude, I think.
Yeah, 100%. I was thinking this morning, preparing for this, what's our baseline? Is our baseline what, absolute achievement and success according to Webster's? That's what it is. Or do we start at 0 and then everything is just on top of that? Whatever I have, I got skin, I got bones, I got movement, I can sit, there are people that can't do that. Okay. Emunah, faith, bitachon, and trust. Another way to avoid coveting is to have faith and trust. Does this concept resonate with you? What does it mean to have faith and trust? The Vilna Gaon. Lo tachmod, do not covet, is the general principle of the 10 Commandments and the entire Torah. Being content, which is the opposite of coveting, is the foundation of the entire Torah. And to uproot coveting, it is only possible with emunah, faith, that one need not worry about tomorrow, and with a heart that is solid and strong in bitachon, trust. Source 2, the Serenity Prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So what do you think the Vilna Gaon is saying when referring to emunah, faith, and bitachon?
Well, I can see someone reading that and at face value saying, it's not up to me, parentheses, I have no responsibility for this. going to just put my hands and my faith in God, and we'll just see what happens. It sort of speaks to Audrey's issue before, is how do we balance ambition and and growth, you know, which comes from ambition, right? With not coveting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you just sit back in the comfy seats and wait and put your faith and trust in God, that may not be the healthiest for you or the community.
Well, go on. What do you think the answer to that question is?
What's the question?
Your question. What's the bad? You know, do we just, is this saying just, you know, everything, God did it, it's God, is God, is God, and I'm not responsible? And on the other hand, where is the place for God when you do lead a responsible life?
Well, I think if you go back to the thought that we are God's partners, and that perhaps God has withdrawn and allowed us to be the environmentalists or to improve our lives, then trusting God to do it all is not very practical.
Well, it's like that joke that, you know, that God has, we have to take action, you know, with God. You know, guy was in the, you know, in a boat and drowning, and he went out, and it was said, you know, a ship comes by and says, you know, I'm here to save you. No, God's going to do it. God's going to do it. And ships, helicopters, things go by, and he says, no, faith in God. And then he drowns, and it goes to heaven, and said, why didn't you, you know, what happened? Why didn't you save me? Because what happened to the helicopter, the 2 lifeboats, and all the sailors that were trying to save you? You know, there's got to be, you know, we have to have some hand in it. I like the beginning part of the quote, that being content is the opposite of coveting. However, it's a little, it's interesting that the other one is you just have to have extreme faith that everything's going to be fine. But maybe it also just, maybe it doesn't necessarily mean that. Maybe it means that whatever your lot is, you have to, you know, be content with it or satisfied with it. But some people aren't.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. It's a hard one. But
I think
it's the second quote. You know, the second quote is, you have to know what you can change and what you can't change, and to know the difference for what you can take action upon. I don't know if that's what that first quote is hinting at, because I don't think that ambition per se is bad. Wanting more, I don't think is bad. Wanting to change something, you know, if there's a purpose to it, yes, it's you want to be able to change the world, have the, you know, or for the good. But I think the thing is knowing what you can and can't, what you do and don't have control of, might be the issue. And then once you know that, you can be accepting and will less want to, you know, covet.
You know, to me, Viktor Frankl, in Man's Search for Meaning, you know, says, it's an amazing line: do not ask what the world can do. Do not ask what the world can do for me, but ask what. Hang on a second, am I getting it wrong?
You're about to quote John F. Kennedy, but go on.
No, I'm not. No. Viktor Frankl says, wait, I haven't got time to look it up. Do not ask what the world, what the world can. I'm messing it up, but the end of the quote is the important part. Is what is the world? Oh, do not ask what you want from the world, but ask what the world wants from you. And to me, that's really what this Vilna Gaon is saying, where he's saying, take out the word world and add God. You know, don't ask what can God do. You know, don't ask. Forget the beginning, but
what can God do for me? But what can I do for God? Or
yeah, that's more like the John F. Kennedy.
But you know,
what is God asking of me? Meaning, you know, like Carol started off. You know, I had a certain life, and then it changed, and one has to ask oneself under that situation. Okay, now what is God asking from me in this situation? Obviously, it's not to sit here and kvetch. I got to do something with it. There's good here. There's opportunity here. So I think in terms of that, it's recognizing the situation you find yourself in is a question of faith. You know, to be able to embrace your situation and say, you know, that snotty-nosed kid that just happens to be mine, that's my situation. That's the child God gave me. Now what? You know? So then you can deal with it. You can embrace it and deal with, even though it's hard, you could deal with that. I think that's the first part. The second part to me, where I would think maybe bitachon, the trust comes in, would be in how far you're able to actually go. Are you able to achieve? You know, I tried very hard. You know, I was ambitious. I wanted to be the greatest, you know, Jewish educator of our generation. You know, I am. Look, you guys are right. But what happened with that? So the trust is, well, did you really try? You know, obviously the first question is, did you work your hardest? I'm not sure. And then the second thing is, well, maybe that's not where God wanted me to be. Maybe this is where, you know, God wanted me to be. And to find contentment in the achievement we do achieve.
I think that's why Zuzia should have been happy being Zuzia and not Moses, because he's not going to be able to achieve Moses' status. But if he's done the most with what he has, or the best he can do with what he has, that's okay. That's good.
I think there's another thing as well that, you know, this summer I was at the Vilna Gaon's yeshiva and at his synagogue in Lithuania. And so of the 120 synagogues in Lithuania, there's one standing and they can't even get a minyan. So when he wrote this, you know, I don't know where they were politically, but, you know, it was decimated. Vilna was decimated, and there's, you know, so it's so sad to see that they can't even get a minyan in this crumbling synagogue. And yet I wonder, you know, sometimes we don't know the impact of what we've done at the time. So if you see the devastation of what happened to his legacy and, you know, to where he lived. And then you wonder, well, now there's sort of a little bit of a resurgence of Jewish life in Poland. And then there's the state of Israel. And then there's teachings. Like, I don't know if we often know what we've achieved. Even in our lifetime, I don't know if we know what we've achieved. And so to ask people to have more of a historical, like a long range perspective of what it is our life meant, like we maybe don't know that.
It's a beautiful thing. I'm sure this has happened to you. You know, now and again, people come up to me and say, you know, you once said something that made a real impression on me. I'm like, what? Like, please tell me. I'm looking for impression. You know, and they say something like, I said that? Like, I can't believe it. Like, wow, yeah, it makes a difference. So yeah. Okay, what's the balance between contentment and ambition?
I think if you're content and just stay there and don't reach out or, you know, okay, I studied Musar, that's enough. I'm happy with what I learned, but if I don't do anything with it, have the ambition to do anything with it, have the ambition to teach what I know or what have you, then it's not a good balance.
So can you give us a rule?
I would say always striving to improve. You know, if I've written and I've done Emunah perfectly, there is no such thing as doing Emunah perfectly. So if you have the ambition to have more faith or more trust, not just to stay where you are, we're always growing. And you should have the ambition to grow to the best of your ability.
Right. And I think where this can really inform that is that piece on uniqueness. Is that if you really tap into how you are an individual and how you have a unique mission, that should be your ambition. The rest, you can be very easily content with. You can be content with others. And even within your mission, there's place first of all, I think it would give a person a tremendous amount of contentment just to know what it is and have that faith. And then in terms of, it's up to you to try your best. The result might not be in your hands. Now, again, knowing what you can control and what you cannot, and having that wisdom to know the difference.
I wonder if contentment is more like a state of being, and ambition is another. It's like happiness, is happiness a sense of well-being? But then you could be sad and still be happy. You can have a sense of well-being and still have the emotion of sadness, even though fundamentally you have a sense of well-being. And I'm wondering if contentment and ambition is like that. Like you can be content. Generally, you have a sense of contentment, but you also have this desire to do better, to do more, to have more. But that doesn't mean you're not content.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly, but that they're
I think the contentment implies what is it, a participle, whatever, that implies a static situation. And we're all taught that life is a journey, we are always in process. And so I think it's possible to be content with where we are on our journey.
Mm-hmm.
And to, rather than think in terms of periods at the end of sentences, to sort of think about questions. Okay, where am I in my journey? What are the questions I'm asking now? And I think that enables you not to remain in a static place.
Nice.
That's beautiful.
Okay. This is a really interesting midrash. All of the 630 mitzvot are included in the 10 Commandments. The midrash below compares the Serenity Prayer to 10 mitzvot in the Torah portion, Parshat Kedoshim. The midrash says it was taught. Why is this Parsha Kedoshim said to an assembly? Rabbi Levi says because the 10 Commandments are included in them. Do not covet corresponds to, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Source 2, verginnen. There's a Yiddish phrase called verginnen. Just by the way, anyone familiar with that phrase?
No.
No? I wasn't.
And I'm a Yiddish speaker.
In this context, but okay. It is defined as a generosity of spirit, an unselfish, empathetic joy that something good has happened or might happen to another person. The Yiddish word verginnen is a cognate of the German word vergonnen, a relatively modern addition to Hebrew, and the word was initially used in the 1970s and gained momentum in subsequent decades. It's actually used in Israel. The Yiddish word does not have a one-word equivalent to English. To fargin is to reach out with a big mazel tov to someone who receives good news, especially when they're being blessed with the very thing lacking in your own life.
Wow.
So what is the connection between not coveting and being able to love others?
I think when you covet, it gets in the way. It's almost like a physical barrier. that when you look in, you're not necessarily just looking into the heart or looking into the face of the person, you're seeing the person as the owner of what you want, which just gets in the way of a full-hearted relationship.
Nice.
I think it's
I think
viewing it.
it creates competition. Why are you coveting? You know, often because you're in competition with them. You know, I want to be the best. I want to be the guy with the, you know, the biggest house. I
was just to say it's the win-lose thinking versus win-win thinking. You know, if something good happens to you, it's sort of a win for me in a sense too. I'm happy as well. It's infectious,
right?
As opposed to, you know, a black-white win-lose scenario.
The scarcity principle. There's only so much good news that can happen, and your good news diminishes my ability to have good news.
Something like that. Just by the way, let's go back to the question of the shoes. You know, or coveting things which don't necessarily belong to people. And it really does speak to this question of ambition. So, you know, you meet your friend and they got a new pair of shoes and they, you know, you want them. Should you go onto Amazon and buy them or not?
That would be like the whole advertising industry, right? I used to be in advertising, so
I'm not sure in a perfect world we're going to have advertising.
I don't think if you really, I mean, you know, I don't think that because someone has something and you go out and get something similar, that's necessarily a bad thing. It might be like, oh, that's a great thing, and I could afford that, and I want. I think the issue is like, what if you can't, you know, afford it, and you really want, you know, yeah, I want to have a Tesla, but you know, it's like, you know, whatever it is, but I think that's the issue. I don't think there's anything per se wrong in seeing that somebody has something, or you like the way somebody's, you know, new house looks with the kitchen and you want to, you know, emulate that. And if you do that, that's fine. But I think I really think it's when you're taking something away from the person that has it originally, you know.
Yeah, that's definitely the main problem. Yeah, I think of it in terms of also, if you've come to the stage of your life where you recognize your individuality and your unique mission, it will be very clear whether a Tesla is a good thing for you or not. You know, is a Tesla going to enhance your real life, the life you're meant to be living? Or are you getting it just to be, you know, caught up in the rat race of appearing successful?
Right. Well, I mean, also if, you know, if you look at the Teslas, like I have a lot of money, but I want to be environmentally conscious, you know, that's the statement that you could be making, not just that it's necessarily a status symbol. That's
yeah, that would be within your, yeah.
I love this concept though. I think that this is such a beautiful concept that just it's the outgrowth of all the work that you do from the very beginning of this booklet. Like if you can do all that work, then you can get to this place where you could be truly happy for somebody that has something that you want and you don't have, a grandchild, you know, successful child, or whatever it is. You know, the shoes, I don't know, you know, but the more fundamental things that we really do want in our lives and maybe don't have, you know, I just feel like if we could get to this place, we would be in such a happier world. We could truly, truly be happy for somebody that has some good that we don't have. That takes so much work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be the environment we're living in.
No.
Which is sad because we have more than ever before.
True.
Right? So, okay, or you've started it, but let's just read this integration here. What does this Diber mean to you as a core value? And if you remember the beginning of the book, we called it seeing your life as a gift. That's the tagline, or, you know, that as a core value is, can you see your life as a gift? when can it be applied? What are the challenges you will face, and how can you overcome them?
I think as Jill said, it is a journey. It is a daily, hourly challenge to try to find that balance. It's not something you achieve once and then you have it. It's like a constant challenge with everything that happens in your lives.
Yeah, and I think also with the passage of time and age, when we get to a certain age, and sometimes, there were goals, maybe they unmet, maybe we went in a different direction. And it needs a reorientation of, okay, I got you. Maybe I do teshuvah on some of the things I did in the past, but that's as much as I can do for the past. Now where am I going, and how do I feel this? How do I inculcate this sense of gratitude, simcha, really? Samech b'chalka is part of, there's a lot of simcha there, to be really happy with what I have in my opportunities, and to go about that in a very responsible and determined way. Yeah, I agree with you. What amazes me is that, if you would ask someone, what is like one of the most basic ideas of Judaism? I don't know how many people would answer this. I don't know how many rabbi educators. This is a basic idea of Judaism. Do not covet, and everything that it is guiding us towards. And that's why we've chosen this phrase, core value. Because it's not just a do or don't. It's not even just a thought. It's a core value in life that we're meant to live with, which I think is pretty, looking at the Jewish world and everyone telling us what Judaism is, it's a pretty radical idea, which is just deep and beautiful and makes so much sense. It's a real, that's why I get so excited about it.
I think, I continue to think about the relationship between this and where people are in life stages, and, coveting youth, coveting beauty, coveting thinness. But, look, I'm at a certain age, and looking at all of that and contentment for me, obviously very different than my 33-year-old daughter. And how do you had brought up the question before, how do you teach it? How do you reinforce it? And it's really, I think, so tied to life cycle. And also the society. Think how hard it is in a society where people are supposed to acquire things, and when we ask people at parties, what do you do? We mean, what do you do for a living? How do you earn your money? And so you're 25 years old, say, isn't that when you're quote unquote supposed to be acquiring, and how much you have to fight that in society if you're going to go a different direction?
I don't know. I think you have to model what you're doing. Do you really think of your life as a gift? Or do you want somebody else's life? And I think that's something that you can show your kids. The negative example would be taking and acquiring, and the positive example would be sharing. I said to my kids, we choose not to drive a Mercedes because the difference between a Subaru and a Mercedes means I can do the following good things. Not just for me, but for others. And if you are able to model that, then you've done somebody a really big service.
Yeah, well, you're right. It's easy to talk about it, but if we don't live it and model it,
And we can't expect others to.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely not. What are the challenges we face doing this?
It's hard.
The American dream?
Right. The culture which we live.
Was that actually I think you guys know that I'm not American born, so don't worry, I can't be the president. But what was that the intent of the American dream? You know,
It depends on how you view the pursuit of happiness.
Well,
you really say it comes from those words. We believe.
Yeah, it doesn't say pursuit of wealth. It says pursuit of happiness. What does that mean? You know, you can be happy with what, you know, a lot.
Right, but I think of comedian George Carlin's old routine about how much stuff you have, and life is about getting more stuff, and then finding a place to put all your stuff. That's what life is.
Okay, I like that. That the American dream wasn't a dream of wealth; it was a dream of happiness. Not sure what's okay. So
I mean, obviously, as we said at the beginning, it's nicer to, you know, money and wealth gives us opportunities and things and comforts, you know, it's, you know, and that old saying, you know, it's better to be rich than to be poor, but they didn't say wealth, they said happiness and whatever you need to do to be happy. And it's not necessarily material, you know, fiscal or material things. Sometimes it's, you know, being able to speak freely, being able to vote in elections, being able to have the freedom to worship whatever, you know, in whatever religion you want and not be persecuted for that. That's not monetary. So happiness is you know, it just didn't say wealth, it said happiness.
I think it did emphasize individual happiness. We don't live in a communitarian society. So I think that feeds into the I, me, my mindset.
Great. Okay. Every day, find a gratitude buddy and share something you are grateful for each day, either by text, email, social media. Encourage others to share their gratitude as well. So someone that did a course with me did this, actually did it with their mother, and they absolutely loved it. There are different theories about how long it takes to form a habit, anywhere from 18 to 254 days. But I think it really could be a great thing to stop and think what you're grateful for once a day. And, you know, a way of sharing, a way of doing this is to share it with someone else, and it has a sense of accountability. Okay, this debate calls on us to recognize others' uniqueness. Identify a unique quality or talent in another person. Point it out to them and encourage them to use it in a positive way. Challenges and opportunities offer us the potential to elevate ourselves and to make a positive impact in the world around us. Each day, identify one challenge or opportunity and the potential that it holds. Okay, there's some support materials. I believe they're online. From Nina's smile, I can see they are. And there's a little bit of additional information we went over last week, the who's who. And here are the personal reflections. Do your independent projects connect to your appreciation of life as a gift? And how can you express your unique gifts through your independent projects? So once again, the idea, and maybe Audrey can speak more about this, of Chai Mitzvah is to really, you know, besides the monthly learning, to take on some learning oneself, to take on a ritual, and to be involved in some social action. And you know, that could be random. When you first hear those questions, they're kind of random, but now one could think of them in terms of, wait, you know, how am I uniquely placed to do some social action? What rituals would make the most sense for me and my family? So maybe we could help. This could help to define those.
I think when you're teaching the Aseret HaDibrot, it may be that each month you focus on something smaller that people can do during the course of that month in the ritual learning social action realm that bring out the Diber. So it could be a little bit different than the other Chai Mitzvah programs. Maybe Musar was similar, that maybe, you just focus on that one as opposed to like a year long. Because in the traditional texts, we usually just ask people to do one thing for the year. But maybe it makes more sense to make this really come alive for people, to reflect upon this over the course of the month. And then when you come back, the first time you're together, you actually talk about what did you do? How did it affect you? How did this Diber come alive for you? And so I envision that maybe that would be a better way to use what we call the bucket list.
Nice.
I think we're going to have to stop right now, right?
Yeah, I have to get going.
Is this supposed to be an hour and a half? I don't know.
It's meant to be a good time together.
Yeah, but I think people
we could try to keep it a little less. It's hard. Yeah. There's a lot of material here. I'm not. It could easily be done in 2 sessions. But I think. Yeah. Okay. So once again, thank you all again.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you.
Are you putting these up online? I'm not going to be able to be here next week. I just wanted to be able to look at it. Okay.
Be online. We'll send out another email with a few notes and a link.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.